Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Strong Talk. Today, it's a special episode, and we have Blayne Gomez with us from Next Step Rehab. He's a physiotherapist, and I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions that will hopefully help more people. But yeah, just help people. Blayne, how are you going?
Cool, man. What's up?
Glad to have you here. I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Talk about this in the gym. I'm like, I'd like to have you on the show.
Didn't see any gym today, though.
I was doing shit outside.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's a long time coming, and I think this will be a fantastic episode where you can help educate some people and maybe clear up some things that people just don't understand about physiotherapy and just exercise in general. But
Sure.
before that, how would you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, why did you become a physiotherapist? What did that look like?
So that's a two-part story. Is when I finished high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. You know, I was looking into different careers and stuff. Went and looked around a few different things. At that time, a guy I knew was involved in an accident and had extensive physiotherapy done, so that's kind of how I first heard about it. And I went to this physio place and saw this nice Benz parked up outside. And I realized every day I went, this Benz was there. I said, well, this profession must be making good money, right? So fast forward a few years, went into physio, got my degree, came back, worked at the same place, only to find out that Benz was a patient soon and not the physiotherapist. Right, but anyhow, jokes aside, I always liked helping people and doing things, you know, something where I'm not stuck behind a desk and something where you can make a difference. You know, it's always a nice job to have. Makes you go home, you feel fulfilled. Most of the time when you can help people, sometimes you can't. But yeah, so that's the main backstory. Last year I opened up my clinic, Next Step Rehab. So something I've always wanted to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's actually, I think a lot of people end up, well, they probably start like that. It's like, hey, I think that'll make money. And you realize, oh, well, it's not really about the money. It's just...
No, for sure. I mean, I always, money aside, you know, I always knew I wanted to do something along the lines of helping people somehow. I looked into being a doctor, but didn't feel for the 10 years of school and respect to those people.
That could be grueling. That idea of the 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's like a basic minimum, you know.
Yeah. All right, so moving right along. People often run to their physiotherapist for any little pain they get or any minor injury. Obviously, it's to your benefit, but is that completely necessary?
So, yes and no. Yes, in the sense of a physio is always a good person to be able to assess what's happening, and then they can tell you, well, look, you don't really need to see me for, you know, I can tell you what to do and you can go home and you know, deal with it. Knowing that sometimes, yes, they don't need the physio, but I would always suggest if, you know, they've tried some things themselves and they can't seem to figure it out, a physio is a good person to go to. You get an assessment and we'll figure out whether you actually need the physio or not. You know, if somebody doesn't need the physio, I'm not going to make them do the physio. Makes no sense. So a lot of the time with these minor aches or pains, you know, somebody comes to me and they says, oh, my ankle hurts today, I did something. I'm going to say, oh, cool, well, put some ice on it, rest it for a couple of days, you know, maybe if it's a muscle or tendon, do some stretches, whatever, and then see how you feel, you know. If, however, you've had that same ankle pain for 3 months now, yeah, cool. You probably should do something about it, you know?
So the answer, I guess, is it depends.
It does depend. It's patient specific. The safe thing to do is see your physio, let your physio then decide, you know, what's the best course of action.
Okay, so let's say I slipped and I misstepped, my ankle hurts. Would you say there's a reasonable amount of time to see if it gets better on its own? Or should I just run out the door and be like, Blayne, help?
So because you mentioned a form of trauma, that changes things a little bit. You know, if you've had a traumatic injury, then if you have pain associated with trauma, again, probably worth getting checked out. But yes, say you said, Blayne, I stepped in a hole, my ankle's swollen, I'll ask you a few questions. Is it bruised? How fast did it swell? What's the amount of swelling, etc.? And then again, could make a determination as to, cool, John, just rest it. It's probably just a minor strain. It'll be fine on its own, or you need to come in here and do some work.
Okay, I think that's pretty reasonable. An often overlooked component of rest and recovery is enough sleep. A lot of people just don't get enough sleep. How important would you say, let's say, again, the same stepping in the hole or any injury, how important is sleep, good quality sleep for recovery?
Good question. So one of the things I hear you speak about that I actually agree with, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course. I mean, sleep is when your body rests and recovers and repairs tissues, and that's when all the good things happen, So if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're prolonging your recovery. So it's similar to if you're a smoker, smoking it does things to the body that slow down your recovery. So imagine people who combine those things. They're a smoker, you like your alcohol and your poison, right? They don't sleep well, then of course your recovery you're doing it to yourself, So yeah, definitely sleep 100%. Research varies. I can't tell you how much is the right amount, whether it's 8 hours or whatever, but get enough sleep and, that's going to speed up your recovery for sure.
What I tend to tell people as well is just, sleep is so important to the point where if you call tech support for something wrong with your computer and they ask you, is it plugged in? Is it on?
Yeah.
That's the importance I usually tell people sleep is.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. On that topic of rest and recovery, when you get an injury, like how long should one, generally, how long would you say one should be off of it? Let's say again, sprained ankle or whatever.
So you'll see a trend there that there's not many definitive answers to these questions. Anybody who gives you definitive answers is probably, lying to you a little bit. But it's totally patient dependent, injury dependent, severity dependent. A lot of factors involved. A lot of the studies and research nowadays are supporting accelerated rehab protocols, which basically is you're doing more earlier on, right? So back in the day, we used to say, yeah, okay, you've hurt your back, lie down in bed. Some doctors still put people on bed rest for these long periods of time, which I think is an old school belief. Right, a lot of the research supports that movement is beneficial, and so does depend on what your injury is. Some things, of course, if you have a broken bone, a fracture, whatever, of course, that needs to be immobilized and you can't go walking on a broken bone, right? So that needs its time to heal. But if it's something else, then chances are some form of movement is going to be beneficial. More beneficial than putting your foot up on a table and leaving it for a week, So
yeah, you'd be surprised that, like, some of the injuries I've had, I've been told numerous times.
Yep.
When I had surgery on my knee and sprained ankle and break toe in this, I was told to avoid stairs, don't do any squats.
Yep.
Just be a cripple.
Yeah. I just think that's an old school train of thought, and that's people who haven't updated their studies and research and gotten with the times.
Yeah, and I have to stay abreast of the tech.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, moving along from that, physio. I mean, you're a big guy. Obviously, you're training. I know you're from the gym. With the advent of a lot of the social media influencers and the Sam Suleks using partials, lengthened partials, you always see them like going to failure and doing these half reps and shit. What are some of the benefits of using a full range of motion, would you say, for joint longevity and I guess just being a big strong man like you in general?
I'll take the compliment. Full range of motion definitely comes into play more with physiotherapy than it does a lot of things. So if you ask somebody what their goals are in the gym, all right? If somebody tells you their goals are to build their body, that's all they care for, then who cares whether they do a full range of motion with every single rep? It doesn't really matter. Your goal is to build the body. You do whatever you need to do to build the body. All right, injury rehabilitation is a little bit different in that, yes, we want to strengthen the muscle in all of its aspects of its range. So for us, it doesn't make sense to, okay, let me just strengthen my bicep in this, small portion of range, and then it's weak in the rest of its range. So for us in our field, it's very important for full range of motion and also different exercise types. So isometrics, eccentrics, concentrics, they play different roles in rehab, but they're all very important to us. Whereas for somebody who's just a bodybuilder or something, doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah, they only care about getting as jacked as possible.
Exactly.
They'll use whatever method to get there.
For sure. It's kind of like your squats, so they're like half range, I mean...
That's a lie. No. With that in mind, a lot of people think that you cannot be flexible if you are strong, or you cannot be strong if you are flexible. And I think there's actually a lot more relation to strength and flexibility than a lot of people think. You have any thoughts on that? Or maybe you can shed some light on that for us.
So what I would say is that I think the reason that exists is because a lot of people who have the strength don't do the flexibility work, or don't do, any form of stretching or things like that. So they develop tightness or lack of flexibility. And then now, you just say, okay, so if you're strong, you're not going to be flexible. But no, it's just that you're not doing the work, If you're talking about flexibility, if you look at gymnasts, some gymnasts are insanely flexible, but also insanely strong. Research also nowadays suggests that strength and flexibility can go hand in hand, and they actually do benefit each other. Strength can benefit your flexibility. So again, just some old school things that, have been created over time, and
yeah, there's some more bullshit that just needs to go.
Pretty much.
There's
a lot of it. a lot of it in this field.
Just like actually we were speaking about this before we started filming. The rest, ice, compression, and elevation.
Right.
And now that can't remember who came up with it, but he's saying, ice is no longer really necessary. Well, it's good for pain management, but it impedes recovery.
Yeah, so ice is a touchy subject with healthcare professionals. You'll find people that are diehard ice people. I actually love ice. It's one of my go-tos for a lot of things. As you said, pain relief, inflammation. I think the school of thought surrounding that now is that inflammation is a natural part of the body's healing process. So in the early stages, yes, you want some level of that natural inflammation taking course. You don't want to stop that, right? But if that inflammation stays there too long, then now you have another problem. So I think that's where the ice more comes into play. Ice also helps to decrease swelling. So I think that's where it also gets a bit touchy, in that, let's say you sprain your ankle, and the ankle swells up like a balloon. Do you just leave it and let the natural course of inflammation go? Do you put some ice on it to help the swelling go down and to help the pain, while probably minimally, affecting the body's inflammation or inflammatory response? Who knows? So it's something that there's not yet enough research, funny enough, or conclusive research to say, absolutely, this is the way to do it, don't ice. Some people suggest heat. There's research to support heat. You put heat on an acute injury. You have a swollen ankle, you put heat on it. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of picking and choosing at the end of the day what works for you and what works for people. And not everything needs a solid scientific explanation sometimes. If I put ice on my ankle and it feels better and I could walk better, common sense says
that's the correct treatment.
Put ice on your ankle, right?
Yeah.
So until we have definitive, lots of definitive research saying don't do it for these reasons, then I'm going to keep doing it.
No, that's absolutely. I think that is the the right tool for the right injury.
Yeah.
Or the right tool for the right job,
Absolutely.
as they say. So, here's another one. Stretching. Is it better before or after you train? A lot of people, there's been some research emerging where I've seen everybody saying stretching's a pile of shit, to do it after, and some people are like, oh no, do it before. Let's shed some light on it.
So another one, unfortunately, where it does totally depend. I know physiotherapists who will tell you stretch before 100%, ones who tell you stretch after 100%, ones who tell you stretching is a complete waste of time. All right, a lot of the old research on stretching is done on pig tissue, right? So it's the studies they did about the extensibility of the tissues and whatnot is done on pigs. So it's a tricky one. It's again one of those where if it makes you feel better, I tend not to do it before just because as you would know, your muscles fire at an optimal firing length, right? So let's say you go to do a squat, a heavy squat, your quads will fire at their optimal firing length. So if you do a bunch of quad stretching right before you try to go and do a heavy squat, you've just temporarily lengthened those muscles, right? And then now you're asking them to fire in a shortened range. So to me, chances are that's probably not good, which is why I tend to stick with stretching after. That being said, again, the research shows that for you to actually change the length of a muscle takes an insane amount of stretching. So for you to have a significant impact on that muscle's length, I mean, I'm talking you have to do an unreasonable amount of stretching, right? So we do use stretches in physiotherapy. Stretching certain muscles will bring you, certain relief, short-term relief. So again, there's no right answer. It's just a matter of preferences. People do their research. I would personally say do some form of dynamic warm-up before, do your static stretching after. That's my belief. Doesn't mean it's the right one.
I also agree with that, for sure.
Well, then it's definitely the right one. Then we got the boss.
That's right. No, for sure. Dynamic before, static after. Static after. Tripping over my words. As we're kind of winding down, almost coming down to the end, can I ask you, because I'm sure a lot of people have asked you this, and just in general, how long have you been training? And if you had any advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Been training I was in the gym pretty much since I was 15, 16, but not seriously. I then went to university, a lot of big guys around, started to take it a little bit more seriously, but also started to push a little too hard, didn't have much knowledge at that point. Got some injuries from then that still affect me to this day. So I guess the advice would be, when you're starting out, always seek help. It doesn't even have to be professional help. There's so much things available to us in this day and age online. You can do your own research and gain your own knowledge before. Don't just go in a gym and you're looking at what other people are doing, trying to copy them, because what works for them might not work for you. It might injure you. You might have an injury. You might have something you can't do exactly what that other person's doing. So definitely seek some form of help before starting. And the more knowledge you have about the human body is the better you can tailor your workouts, right? So for physios, obviously it's easier for us because we have a good anatomical understanding of the human body and human physiology and whatnot. So if I know exactly where a muscle comes from, goes to, how it works, what muscles are working against it, I know exactly what to do to effectively work that muscle. And that's very important, is knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Don't just go in the gym and, all right, this guy's doing that exercise, so I'm going to do that too. Makes no sense.
Yeah,
right?
You have absolutely no idea how long he's been training for all
sure.
those different things, if his goals are the same as yours. So
for sure.
being a copycat is kind of not in your best interest.
And I know you didn't ask about sets and reps, but it just also goes to show that if you do 3 sets of 10 reps, that doesn't mean 3 sets of 10 reps is going to work for me. So everything needs to be tailored for you if you want the best results.
And just like with physiotherapy, I think it's also, you have to see what works and then adjust from there. Okay, well,
Sure.
10 you get a good response. Okay, well, could I push a little harder at that weight? Okay, maybe 12 is right.
For sure.
Maybe 15.
Yeah, all
maybe
depends on your body, your goals,
Yeah.
multitude of factors, but at the end of the day, it needs to be tailored for you. You can't have one general program for everybody. Doesn't work that way.
No. Yeah. Not everybody's like, oh, I want to get big and jacked or big and strong. Or,
Yeah, of course, different goals,
Correct.
can have different paths to reach those goals.
So I asked my Instagram a little bit earlier for some questions, and I already know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask you as a professional, if someone suspects that they have a slip disc, quote unquote, a herniated disc, or however you want to call it,
Sure.
I know the answer is to seek professional help and get it checked. But is there a way that they would be able to, I guess, figure out if they do have one?
There's symptoms that can point you in the direction of, yes, maybe you have a slip disc, but at the end of the day, if you want a more definitive answer, the only way somebody can tell you 100% sure you have a slip disc is by doing an MRI. However, with that said, we have assessments we do with Physio that I can tell you, with 80-90% certainty that you have a slip disc, because all of your symptoms and movements and everything, it leads me to that. Right? We have assessments, we have special tests, we do things like that. So I can tell you with pretty high confidence, that yes, John, you have a slip disc. Talking about MRIs just briefly is that a lot of people rush to do scans, but I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's something like 60 or 60 something percent of people who've done MRIs have an issue with a disc, but they have no pain, right? So let's say you went to do an MRI for something else. They say, oh look, John has a slip disc, but he has no pain. He's never had pain in his life from this slip disc. So what does that tell you? That tells you that it's only a problem when you're coming to me with pain. So we need to get rid of the pain. The slip disc necessarily isn't, the whole issue. I could be sitting here right now with a slip disc in my back. So going to do an MRI, unless it's severe, most of the time, you're just giving your MRI people the money. Sorry, MRI people.
Sorry, medical healthcare.
Yeah.
Medical healthcare people.
It has its place, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the majority of my patients don't need an MRI.
Yeah, I think once the pain is severe enough, then you can kind of be like, okay, we need to see what's going on.
Exactly. Or sometimes I'd say we've been treating something for a certain length of time and it's not working. Then we say, okay, maybe we need a little help here, a little further assistance, and they are helpful in telling you exactly, okay, this is the exact levels, but not absolutely necessary.
I think definitely people who just run to the doctor and they're like, oh yeah, doctors know everything, etc., etc. I'm not trying to downplay the importance of medical healthcare professionals or anything like that. But a lot of people will take the scan as the gospel truth, and sometimes you don't need to do the scan.
Absolutely.
A flexion and tolerance test on your back, around on your back and pulling on the chair and saying that, okay, that hurts, but if I'm upright, it's okay. Then you can be like, okay, well, this is probably the problem. There's a lot.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you, for us at least, we treat the symptoms, right? So if I treat the symptoms, we know what the underlying cause is, most likely. I'm going to treat you, you're getting pain because of X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to address those factors, and then guess what? Your pain goes away. Whether your slip disc goes away or not, I don't have MRI vision, but does it matter? No, you no longer have pain, right? And the chances of you having a severe injury where, I think that's a big issue people have, is that they think that their disc is just going to magically fly out and they're going to become paralyzed or something. But the incidence of that is very low. People with severe disc injuries normally have some form of trauma associated to it, right? Or some underlying condition, osteoporosis or something more significant. Or they've, as I said, trauma. You do a bad deadlift, and you feel a severe pain in your back and your legs go numb and you can't walk. Yeah, cool. That's
You definitely need some help then.
Exactly. So it has its place.
think most people with their back pain just spend too much time sitting on their ass.
For sure, sitting.
Tight hips, weak back,
Yeah.
weak core.
Sit too much. Everybody, you spoke about that, no?
Yeah, chronic sitting. You
Yeah.
sit in your car, you sit at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tell my patients this all the time. You know, if you go through your day, look at how much you sit, especially if you work an office job. You're sitting the whole entire day, minus the 1 hour that you might go to the gym, and the little walking you do to get to your car to sit and to get home to sit and very big issue.
Yeah, the pain might not be a slip disc or herniated disc. It might just be a product of your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, sit too much.
So yeah, Blayne, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, man.
Super value your time. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Where can people find you?
So the clinic's located at number 8 Rookery Nook in Maraval. You could reach us on our phone 379-7525 or by email, which is nextstep.rehab23@gmail.com. You could WhatsApp us. Pretty easy. Come and see us if you have any issues.
Guys, thanks again for tuning in. Thank you again for our guest.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'll
Can't say the same.
I'll have all the pertinent information in the description. If you have any trouble with chronic pain you've been suffering, please reach out to Blayne, and I'll see you guys next time.
Peace out.